Guest chaired that House Intelligence Committee hearing today about the Iranian threats to the U.S. He's also one of the few people outside of the administration to get classified White House briefings on the military operation in Iran. Republican Congressman from Arkansas, Rick Crawford, joins me now. Congressman, thank you. We played a clip of Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard testifying in front of you today, when she said that the United States and Israel have different goals in this war. She said, we want to destroy Iran's missiles, mines, and military, and that Israel wants regime change. Obviously, this is the DNI saying this. This could be crucial, if true, because regime change doesn't usually happen without boots on the ground, does it?
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. In this case, what you have is right now, I think what we've seen is a total disruption of leadership in Iran. That could be what facilitates regime change. Do we need to go in there physically? Does Israel need to put boots on the ground? I don't necessarily think that's the case. At this point, it's still a little bit early to tell, but what we do know is that they've got an identity crisis with regard to who's in charge in Iran. The individual that we thought was in charge, the supreme leader, intel reports suggest that he is incapacitated, that I've even seen some open source reporting that suggests he's in a coma. He's had a leg amputated as a result of a wound sustained in a strike, and that he's really incapable of leading. And so these statements that are being issued by people on his behalf, but there's the individual on your screen.
And
I'm not sure. Correct. I'm not sure what his status is right now, but I do know it's not good.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard testified today that Mojtaba Khamenei was, quote, very severely injured, and that it's unclear who's calling the shots in Iran. So, I mean, that is, she said under oath, we're less certain of who's leading Iran now than we were 6 weeks ago. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it could be a good thing, and it also could be a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. I think so. What we have is a fragmented leadership cadre. We don't really know who's in charge, but we do know that there are orders. There are elements of the military, and there are 4 different branches. Actually, 5. The Navy doesn't really come into play because they've been sufficiently destroyed. They're combat ineffective. The other forces, the IRGC, the Quds Force, and Artesh, which is the sort of the old school military that existed prior to the Islamic Revolution, and the besieged militia. I'm not sure who's calling the shots on those individuals, but we have outlying areas, what they call this mosaic rule, where some of these individuals, it's almost like back in World War II when you had Japanese soldiers stationed on these islands in the Pacific, and they didn't know the war wasn't over, and the war was over. They just kept fighting. They found these people in the 70s that believed the war was still going on. So what you have are in these outlying areas, you're going to have some of these militias, these elements of various militias that will continue to fight until they're told not to, because they haven't been communicated with. And so that's maybe one of the biggest challenges we would have to overcome, is how you subdue those sort of those elements in the outlying areas that are under no central control.
Yeah, worth reminding our audience that Iran is a massive, massive country geographically. Right. Tulsi Gabbard also testified today and was asked questions by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik about the resignation of Joe Kent, who was one of her top deputies. Joe Kent said in his resignation letter that Israel, quote, deceived President Trump and convinced him to launch this war. When asked about that, Gabbard said that she was, quote, concerned. What did you, but that's all she said. What did you take that to mean? Was she concerned that Kent believes that? Is she concerned that that might be true?
I won't attempt to characterize exactly what Director Gabbard meant. I can give you what I believe my assessment is in Joe Kent's letter of resignation. I thought that was ill-timed. I thought it was ill-spoken. I want to be careful not to malign him as a veteran, as a fellow veteran, as a warrior, as someone who has given an awful lot to the country. Respect that service. What I don't agree with was the manner with which he left service, and the way he did it was completely inconsistent with that warrior ethos. And to malign the nation of Israel and to blame all those things. And he had a completely different characterization of the relationship with Israel prior, as far back as at least 2 or 3 years. And then, of course, during his confirmation hearings, he had a completely different assessment of the relationship with Israel and the United States, as well as his view of the threat that Iran posed. So I don't know what happened in the interim, what changed his mind. I'll leave that to him to explain. But I really rebuke those statements with regard to his characterization of Israel. I think that is a gross misstatement and should have never been done. It was mishandled. I respect his ability to disagree with the administration, but the way he did it was unacceptable.
All right. This is obviously germane because now we have the president posting that post on Truth Social last night. He was clearly livid with the Israeli attack on the Iranian oil and gas field, and then today instructing Netanyahu not to ever do that again. So we're seeing a little bit of daylight between the two sides, or at least the two objectives, at least according to the testimony from Tulsi Gabbard. Congressman Rick Crawford, you're always welcome to come back. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming